Hello and welcome to episode 258 Checkpoint Chat. My name, as always, is Alessandro Barbosa. I'm joined, as always, by Matthew Figuera.
I'm feeling so underprepared today. I don't know
why.
It just
why is this different from any other week?
Missed my alarms this morning. Flew out of bed. Got our footage together. But I'm ready now.
You're ready now. Ready to go.
I'm ready to go. I don't know. Just keep thinking, have I missed something? Have a look at Audacity.
I don't think there will ever be a week where you don't think that.
No, I think
there will always be something.
This has been an ongoing theme for the last few episodes, and I'm so sorry. I just can't escape this feeling that one day, or just something's amiss. And by the time we're done, and I export and I edit, I realize, it's actually fine. Everything went better than expected.
I don't know if we've ever spoken about this, but do you have any sort of like I don't know whether to call them tics, but like, you know, when you leave home and like a few minutes later you're like, wait, did I lock that door, or did I turn that thing off, or do you get that quite often
with recording,
or just in general? No,
just in general, 100%. Oh yeah, it's saying when Lenska and I leave, it's have we closed the windows? All this,
but at least it's before you've left the home.
Yeah. But no, we've had moments where we're at the bottom of our stairs, and you've seen our stairs, and then there's a question: did we do X? And then we both look at each other, and then inevitably one of us goes up to check that we did in fact put off X or switch on Y or close Z, and 10 out of 10 times we have done that thing, but it's just that nagging feeling.
Course. Yeah. You can't enjoy your day without double checking. No. Yeah.
So now before we leave it is like I said, we don't have a list of an order of things, but we typically look at the window, check the one switch there, check the heating's off in winter, and then we leave. You know? Yeah.
Oh, but yeah, heating in winter. I didn't even think about that, because then your electricity bill would just be nuts.
Oh, but thankfully, our heating is included. So I've heard horror stories of how much heating could cost.
Just let it go. Just let it rip. Like,
hey, but
global warming for who?
I remember.
Not for you.
No, not for us. It was beginning of this year, January, February. I mean, obviously it's winter, it's the coldest, and because the UK goes back an hour, so I was working. My office hours shifted an hour earlier, so I was starting super early.
Oh, has that happened already? I thought it was only end of October.
No, but I'm talking about beginning of this year. It's like January, February,
okay,
midwinter. Okay. It's very cold. I'm starting work early. I'd get to the office on a Monday, and whoever was there on the Friday had just left the heating on all weekend.
Oh, no.
Walk
for a whole office?
For our office. So walk, because it's like it's a big building, but we obviously had, our office was part of it, whatever. Walk in, and it's just, you think, damn, this is on the whole weekend. Do these people not understand the load shedding we face back in South Africa? Because there's not enough power to go around.
Yeah, 100%. And also just what a colossal heating as well, like, is so power heavy.
100%, yeah.
We have not the opposite problem, but I actually don't know. I've never left my office like last on a Friday, so I don't know. Like, our office is not huge, but not small. So we have different aircon like zones. There's little panels all over the office, that control different vents and whatever. And I have no idea if those are like off. Someone turns them off at the end of the day. In any case, like, there is one of the founders of the company is very pedantic with keeping it at a consistent 23 degrees, which is a good temperature. Yeah, temperate, it's good. And I think the idea is to, if it's always on 23, then the temperature in the office is always a consistent thing. The problem is that when you have an office with a lot of people in it, the aircon needs to work harder to maintain that temperature.
Yeah.
So when everyone disappears for 1 hour for lunch, it suddenly doesn't compensate in time. So you come back from lunch and it is Arctic in there. It is so fucking cold for a good hour. because the thing's just been blasting cold air as if like the temperature hasn't changed. And then within an hour, then it's like temperate again. But that hour, especially because we go out and eat outside and it's like sunny and it's like right now it's super hot. But I come inside from that and I have to like put on a jacket. It's ridiculous. And I wonder how much energy is being used to bring that upon us at that time.
I found there's the opposite problem where at our office, if so we can control the aircon and we have great joy debating what we should have it on, because there are people in the office who like it super cold, people who want it a bit warmer, whatever. So that aircon dial changes all the bloody time. But I do find that if people go out for lunch, like they're walking, whatever, then they come back, they're walking, they go, "Oh, it's hot in here," and it's like, no, it's not. You've just been active, like you've been walking.
Oh, right, yeah.
You just sit down, give yourself 5-10 minutes, you'll see it's actually fine. But nope, aircon gets pumped super cold, and then just shake
and then
my
they
head.
Cool down, and then by then the whole office is cold, so now it'll take time to go back
just
up.
Thinking, damn, I remember the times when I wasn't this cold.
See, I think then it's a good thing that not everyone has access to the aircon. Like, if it's just I mean, my situation notwithstanding, like having it consistent is a good thing. I used to actually in the office, there's a room which is somewhat like siloed off. I say siloed off, but it's basically like it's mostly covered by glass. There's only one door going into it, and it's where most of the marketing team sits. And for a while earlier this year, I was sitting there with one or other two devs because like space in the office was kind of getting a bit odd and they'd shuffled people around. Really nice room, got lots of friends there, really great. Really awful because they have their own like unique aircon zone, and that thing, fuck man, like it would be sometimes set to like 25 degrees, and I'm like, guys, we can't do this.
That is hilarious.
It is so hot in here, it feels like a fucking sauna. Crank it down back to 23, the temperate, and they're like, it's so cold, it's freezing in here, and then back up to 25, and I'm just like, I'm actually dying. This feels like the desert. I can't focus when it's like that warm in there. It was nuts.
I just want to point out that you spoke about something essentially equivalent to aircon privilege.
Yes, essentially. 100%. That's what that is.
As one would go get their driver's license, one needs to do a test to assess their capabilities or ability to maintain a fair air conditioning temperature.
It was a war in there because like people would adjust the aircon without anyone else knowing. The panel was by the door, so as people would walk out to go get water, they just go boop and change it down like half a degree or a degree, and it didn't make a sound, so no one would know. So every now and then I'd be like, wow, it's a bit warm in here, and I would turn around to the panel and it was like two degrees higher than it should have been.
I'm with you. People shouldn't be allowed. It should be 23 and that's
it. Should be locked, just locked down.
Yeah,
those panels shouldn't exist. There should be a central app that is controlled by one person. Like that's it.
And it should just be 23. Maybe
yes,
maybe 23.5, maybe 22.5. Debatable.
There are some oddities in the office though, because like obviously it used to all be open plan, and now rooms have been made. So I don't know if there was just like a lapse in like sort of how designing where rooms are situated by one another. But we have this one room which is huge, all encased in glass. We call it like the fishbowl, and it's like where most of the support staff sit. So it's like a lot of people in one room, and so even though the aircon's set to 23 there, it really pumps hard to try and maintain that temperature. The problem is there's a small room next to it meant for only 2 people that feeds off the same aircon. So when you walk in there and that thing is blasting this main room to keep it 23, this tiny room is just like maybe like 18, 17 degrees. It's horrendous. And there's nothing you can do about it. No. It's like those two are linked and that's that, it's a bad time.
Well, speaking of aircon, why don't we pivot to one of the greatest movies ever made, Con Air. Am I right?
I had this brief few seconds to try and guess where you were going with that, and I did not get there fast enough.
That thought popped into my head a good 5 minutes ago. And I've just been patiently waiting to slide that.
Con Air, that's with Nicolas Cage and his beautiful long flowing hair, isn't it?
What's the first thing you picture when I say Con Air? It's him walking out of the plane.
Just like
that gif, going,
so
like
good.
Fresh air.
That movie is like he's a bad guy, and then the bad guys take over the plane. He's like, no, actually, I'm going to be a good guy.
There's bad guys, and then there's good bad guys. And Nicolas Cage is a good bad guy who,
because of his hair,
his hair, I can't remember. That's up there with Anaconda, where it was just one of those movies that you always saw on TV. It doesn't matter what day of the week it was.
You're born knowing what that movie is.
You're born knowing your first words, Con Air. You think, GIF.
It's that, and you're born knowing that Bruce Willis is dead in The Sixth Sense. That's it. It's just 100%. How pop culture works now.
Damn.
Darth Vader is Luke's dad. You're born with that knowledge. It's passed through the umbilical cord.
That would be wild if that were possible. If you could pass on as a parent to your kid all the knowledge.
Do you ever remember a time of not knowing Darth Vader was a Skywalker? No. I don't.
No, it's true. But I also think, is it called the Nelson Mandela Effect, where you remember things, or universally people remember things a certain way, but it's not actually that?
Yes.
And I know Star Wars has one of those where I can't now. I'll butcher the quote, but everyone knows it as like, Luke, I am your father. But he doesn't actually say that. He says something else. And it's wild when it's pointed out to me. I'm like, what?
Wait, what? No way.
No, you're gonna look at it. It's something along those lines, but that it's not that exact line as you know it.
Oh my god, the first thing that came up when I googled this was a Reddit on can anyone explain the Mandela effect on Luke Iron.
So what is
the line, as we know, is no, I am your father.
Yeah.
However, because Vader's directly addressing a question, it's weird to quote that line out of. Oh, so he never says Luke.
No.
He's like, you killed my father, and he goes, no, I am your father. He doesn't go, Luke, I am your father.
But everyone remembers it as Luke, I am your father.
Wow. Wow. I was not born with this knowledge.
There we go. Well, your parents clearly didn't watch Star Wars when you were born. Didn't pass on this knowledge.
God damn. Well, we just spoke about and proved the Mandela effect right there. So I think that's been a productive podcast already.
It was
wild.
A genuine Mandela effect. Star Wars, and then you're going, wait, what? Let me look.
Yeah, I don't remember it like that. Fuck.
It is, because there are many moments like that, and you wonder, how the hell does this happen? There's just this collective knowledge of a thing happened a certain way, and it just didn't.
Yeah, and it just sticks in your head, because obviously you speak about it quite often, and then it just gets reinforced in your brain that that's how it took place. So
yeah.
You know what else is a Mandela effect? Me saying that this is a video game about... Fuck! This is a podcast about video games, not a video game about podcasts. God damn it!
Oh,
how did I mess that up so badly?
People will
God
remember
damn.
now. This is a video game about podcasts. It's a quick time event. Push X.
Yeah. Fuck. God damn it. I'm just so irritated now by that. Whatever. We should just end the show right now. Just God. Video games. There's quite a bit of them, and we haven't been yet to chat about them in a while. So there's a lot to catch up on, and the stuff to catch up on feels old, which is bizarre. There's just been so much
wild,
happening.
Actually, I mean,
it's crazy. I mean, here's the games we haven't got. Well, we haven't played, so we can't talk about Silent Hill, Metaphor Refantasio. What is the other one?
I know there's Until Dawn floating around, which also came out recently.
Until Dawn as well. But like those are the two big ones that came out in the past since we last recorded that we haven't even looked at.
Yeah.
And there's more to come this month still. So isn't there's like a Call of Duty this month? There's
25th of October. It's like 2 weeks away.
Sounds right. Wild. Absolutely insane. But
insane.
what we both have been playing is this year's Legend of Zelda, because it feels like we are getting one a year at this rate, and I'm not complaining.
100%. No,
But this is the one where you actually play as Zelda. It's Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom? Is that
Echoes of Wisdom. It's the first game where someone who doesn't know will go, oh, wow, you play as Zelda, and you go, yes.
Correct. You are right for
you,
the first time in your life.
If they go, what about using the sword? And you go, no, that's Link. You have to explain.
Yeah.
But you do actually, in fact, play as Zelda. Although if you're watching the footage, you might be confused going, but I'm seeing Link, because that's just how the game opens. It's you playing Link.
True.
They use it as a little tutorial to teach you, this is movement, whatever, but this isn't a spoiler because you'll probably see it in the next 5 minutes. Something happens to Link and then you take control of Zelda, who cannot do cool forward flips and do half the cool shit Link can, but she can do.
Yeah, it's a bit of a crime that they give you such a good jump and then take it away from you almost immediately.
I mean, look at this. It's like a cool forward flip, whatever.
I know, it's so good.
What is really, really cool about this game, so I went into this game knowing absolutely nothing. I saw it revealed at the Direct, but I mean, that is like, I didn't really watch footage. It's sort of me catching up going, oh, there's a new Zelda game coming, whatever. So I had no idea what to expect. Mechanically, narratively, you kind of figure something happens to Link, if you're playing Zelda. But the cool twist or trick of this game is that you as Zelda get access to a staff, and you have a cool companion following you around called Try. And their power is the ability to make echoes from items and enemies in the world around you. So, for example, if you walk past a crate, you can learn to copy that crate and then make that crate at a whim to, for example, climb up it to get onto a ledge. Every enemy you defeat, you can learn as an echo, and that can become an ally or a temporary ally for you to fight against other enemies you encounter. So that's basically the starting loop of the game. And when you first get the power to do this, you think like, well, that's quite cool, but like, I'm going to be drip fed things as I need them. Except that doesn't happen, because every enemy you kill and most of the things you walk past, you can copy. So within the first hour, you've got access to a bed, a crate, a boulder, a trampoline, a tree, like all these items that you can pull together to get to certain places or do certain things with. And the same thing happens with enemies. I think you'll first get the ability to create an echo of this cute little harmless blob. But after an hour, again, it's like you've got the blob, you've got a bat, you got this, you got that. And I'm thinking, damn, I've played the first 2, maybe 3 hours of this game. And I think, holy shit, how many things am I going to learn to copy by the end of the game? Because the rate at which I'm being fed things is pretty insane. So yeah, I don't actually know how far you've gotten in the game, but I mean, I'm sure you've seen the ability to do echoes or not yet.
No, I have. I don't think I've played as far as you, but I've met Try. I've got the little rod, and it's kind of, I've escaped the dungeon that you're in at the beginning, and kind of now opened up to, oh, okay, you can start walking around to that portion of the map, and kind of starting the adventure. And I agree with you. It's pretty overwhelming at first how much choice you have, and how quickly the game just opens up. It's like, nope, this is the core mechanic of this game, and this is how it's going to be, and when we're going to let you figure it out for yourself. Which I kind of appreciate. It's the Breath of the Wild approach to Zelda, but in a game that doesn't look like Breath of the Wild, or looks more like a traditional Zelda experience. So I'm curious to see how that kind of pans out, because especially with Tears of the Kingdom, emergent gameplay was such a big thing there, where you could combine things and create different structures and kind of suss out how you were going to deal with a problem in a very unique way. And it feels like Echoes of Wisdom is kind of building on that in its own way, so to speak. It's interesting. It's there's definitely clear solutions for how you're meant to solve something, but I could see it already with the growing repertoire of things you have access to. becoming more of a, oh, I did it this way, and you being like, oh, I did it a completely different way to that.
Yeah.
And both of them being completely valid because that's what the game allows for. So it's cool. I like that approach. I'm curious to see how they kind of massage, messaging that to the player, because I think it can be very overwhelming.
Yeah.
And I just want to see like what are the cool sort of echoes that you find in the very distinct areas that you get to explore. Like you've got the the desert and the the typical 4 biomes that a Zelda game usually offers. So it's cool that Zelda has her own distinct mechanic. I think that's really cool. It's a lot better than like you're playing a Zelda, but she, for all intents and purposes, is the exact same swordsman as Link. I think it's cool that she has her own distinct array of moves. And I'm very curious to see how it evolves throughout this like story.
Yeah, I mean, even so again, like I've played maybe like going on 3 hours, between 2 and 3 hours. But even then, I've already been given so much. So, for example, after one of the first main dungeons you do, you actually do get Link's sword. So think of how in the game you pick up his hood and then Zelda like transforms. She looks like Link with his hood on, whatever.
Yes.
When you pick up his sword, it's the same sort of thing where like some effect happens and she looks kind of like a female version of Link. And you get his moveset, but you can only use it for limited amounts of time. You get a brand new bar, like an energy bar that you have to find orbs to fill, whatever. So you get that, right? Which then again lends you his higher jump and the ability to attack for a limited time. But then prior to that, you get the ability to sort of grab items. Kind of think of I can't remember what the ability is called in Tears of the Kingdom or Breath of the Wild, but the ability to like pick up an item and move it, whatever. You get
like the ultra hand thing.
Yeah, so you get a similar move here using Try that you can like grab huge objects. Like if there's a massive boulder in your way, you can actually move it.
Cool. Okay.
So like just think of those 3 things alone: the ability to create echoes, the ability to mimic Link for a short amount of time, the ability to move huge objects. I mean, those are already 3 very diverse things in the opening hours, and you can combine them already to do a bunch of interesting things. So that's why I do wonder, I think this game is, if I understand correctly, like 15 to 20 hours long. It's just like, damn, how far does this game go if these are the tools I already have at my disposal? Like, how am I going to be expected to use them, and what else am I going to find in this game?
I think that's what's cool, is that it's limited by your imagination, and I think just experimentation. Like, oh, I have this idea, I wonder if this works. You try it, it's like, that worked exactly as I expected, or the complete opposite happens, and that's just as cool. Like you said, you pick up a massive boulder, I'm sure you could use that to kill enemies, as opposed to always changing over to this Link echo to fight traditionally. I wonder if eventually you can pick up enemies themselves and just plop them in water or something.
I was just going to say, I haven't tried it yet, but I'm pretty sure that you could just yeet an enemy off a cliff if you wanted to. So
I want to do that all the time now.
It's great.
So I don't know if you said you haven't really read up much about the game, but there's been interviews with the development team, and to no surprise, I think this game actually started out as a Zelda maker, sort of like Super Mario Maker.
Okay.
So they were kind of trying to do that, and I assume they built all these tools for, echoes are essentially things you probably would have placed in your own. Yeah, and they would have had to react with anything you put in there. And eventually it just evolved into, no, this should not be a Zelda maker. This should just be its own game. And eventually starring Zelda. But all the building blocks of a like dungeon maker in the Zelda style, you can see are there. It's kind of neat that they were able to recontextualize it in this way.
Yeah.
It's really, really cool. I think it's quite novel. I really love how the game looks. It's the Link's Awakening sort of look and engine, and I think it looks great.
It's a great
like
style.
Diorama feel. it runs really badly on the Switch, though.
Yeah, I
I
found
don't know if you've noticed.
there are some frame drops, particularly in like the bigger areas. Like if
Yeah.
you're watching the footage now, it's great because you're in a closed dungeon or prison, whatever, no problem. But yeah, the moment you get to some of the big areas, the Switch is showing its age here.
It's weird though, because it's not like, oh, it's a little chuggy here and there. It's like bad. Like it feels really jarring when you move from, like you said, a dungeon that runs completely smoothly to like the sort of open world where it's really stuttering, really struggling. And I remember that in Link's Awakening a bit, but not to this degree. It's very, very odd.
But it's weird as well coming from Nintendo, where like I always remember Nintendo being the company that didn't matter how, quote unquote weak their hardware was compared to the likes of PlayStation or Xbox. The games would have their own distinct style, and they, and first party games would always run super smoothly. Like be optimized to hell and back. And it is weird that, I mean, I can't really criticize him because Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild are big, open world games with lots of things that can happen at any time. But even those have their moments where it's like, oof, if you create a fire in Tears of the Kingdom or Breath of the Wild and there's gusts and whatever, your frames dip like horrendously.
Yes.
And it's just weird because, you'd think Nintendo would optimize this kind of game, which is a lot smaller in terms of that sort of scale. You're not in this huge open world. You're just sort of a fixed perspective, whatever. And yeah, I don't know. I've also noticed the performance isn't 100%. And it, like, to be clear, it's not game breaking, but it is a bit jarring. Like it's a bit like, oh, come on.
It's jarring as well because you know, like you said, you've just spoken about Breath of the Wild, and it definitely has performance issues, but that game in terms of scope is just so much larger than this. Yeah. So you'd expect that there'd be fewer issues here. But I mean, I don't really know what's going on in the background and, how highly detailed all these things are. So
yeah,
it's peculiar. And it immediately, I'm like, cool, that we need a new Switch. Like,
100%.
If this is what's happening on this sort of game, like you said, a Nintendo game where they are far more precious about that sort of thing, we definitely need something a bit more powerful. Yeah. I'm enjoying watching you solve this. The footage here is like the first sort of area where you get control of Zelda and her powers, and just seeing how fucking chaotic you are with this is really bringing me a lot of joy. Like, I was so slow and measured through you. I was playing it like a stealth game. You're just like, I'm going to box all these guards in so that they actually can't get to me, which is not how I thought to do it.
No, but I think it does show how throughout the game there are going to be many, many situations where players will tackle them completely differently.
Yeah. It is. Yeah, it's interesting. I don't think I even used boxes around them. I just like timed my run to get around them. You're like, I'm going to box you in and you cannot get out of here. I'm curious to see what you do with this. So you just came across like a pot and it's like, cool, you've learned this echo and now it's added to your library forever and ever. Like you can use it whenever. I imagine the interface for cycling through these echoes is going to get ridiculous at some point.
I think it's, because I've got access to quite a lot now. But it's the same sort of thing with Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, where if you pull open your inventory, you can sort by type, recently acquired, most used. But I think there will come a point where there's just so much, and you will inevitably, I imagine, use, the same 3 to 7 things more regularly than some of the other things. So maybe you'll filter it that way. Or maybe you like to just have it filtered by recently acquired, so you can just keep using the latest thing as you have it. But yeah, it's a good time. I'm really
Game's
enjoying.
Good.
Yeah, I'm enjoying my time with it. And again, like, I'm early days. I'm very keen to see where this goes.
Looks good on that OLED as well.
Oh yeah,
really pops.
It looks great, and I think this sort of toy/diorama style is the sort of style they should just keep for these classic-esque Zeldas moving forward.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if they're going to keep pushing forward on the sort of Breath of the Wild template for future, I don't want to say mainline games. These are all mainline games, but like, the bigger releases, marquee releases for the series, then that's cool. If that means we get more traditional Zelda games in this sort of style, I'm all for it. Like, I'm so happy with that. So yeah, that'll be really cool to see in the future.
100%.
Yeah, a bit of a bummer that a Switch 2 likely will launch with an LCD. I just thought about that, and
Nintendo,
really hurts.
just
I can't go back from this OLED.
Give us
it's
the
so
OLED,
good.
just out the gate, please.
Ridiculous.
Please.
Yeah, I'll pay more for it. I'll do
I'm
it.
telling you, switch OLED and then switch to OLED, switch to light. Let the players decide.
Yeah, we know that's not happening, but it would be really nice if that was the case.
Imagine.
Cool. So from colorful and whimsical to dark, dreary, and gory, Diablo IV, Vessel of Hatred, i.e. that game with the opening cinematic that gave you nightmares. Diablo 4 is fucking good, man. It's so
good. Before you even dive in, I just want to tell you, I finished Diablo 4 just yesterday, and I wish I could tell you that credits rolled because they didn't. Which is,
so you beat the big bad and that's it.
And that's but I mean, if I were playing the base game, do you remember when you beat the base game? If you got credits,
definitely rolled. Yeah.
Okay, not definitely. For me. They basically went like, okay, cool. Like play the expansion. That's essentially what happened to me.
I'm not surprised by that actually. They're like, oh, you still got a good third of the story to go.
Yeah, well, it's funny coming in at this point because I imagine if I played a year ago, the way the story ended, I've gone like, okay, like they're clearly setting up the expansion. It is just weird playing through the base game now, having an idea of how the expansion is set up, like what's the premise, and going, okay, I see where this is going, to finishing the base game and going, oh, like I didn't roll credits. I guess they just want me to go straight to the expansion now. But anyways, I finished the base game. It's great, and I really do want to play the expansion.
It's a good place to start, really, because I really, really like the story in the base game. I think it grapples with like characters in ways that Diablo never has. And I know people are like, oh, who cares about the story in Diablo? I really like the stories and I like the mythology and the lore. And I thought Diablo 4 finally came up with a compelling villain rather than just, Diablo himself. I thought Lilith was really cool. Kind of like almost a tragic character in a way because you get a lot of her backstory and how like she's only doing this because she's kind of been screwed over so many times before. I really liked her. And, her dying at the end of the base game, I was like, okay, that's going to leave a pretty big hole that needs to be filled. And unfortunately, Vessel of Hatred doesn't fill it.
Nice.
You are now kind of dealing with Mephisto, it is Mephisto, correct?
Yeah.
Lilith's father. And he's now been trapped in the Soul Stone that Nerel, one of the big characters from the base game, is kind of transporting to try and find a like permanent prison for him. The problem with this game's story is that there doesn't seem to be like a central villain right up until sort of the last quarter or so. There's this new leader of the Cathedral of Light, which is having its own like crisis of faith after they were kind of decimated when going into hell. He's kind of like really bad, and you see him in the game's like opening. He seems to not be a great guy. He like kills people even though they're repenting and stuff like that. But then he only crops up again in like the last quarter of the game. Mephisto kind of is like around, but you don't deal with him again really directly until the last quarter of the game. So there's the sense that the story is spinning its wheels a lot of the time, trying to introduce you to the new class, the Spiritborn, and the lore behind that class, as well as the region, as opposed to kind of thrusting the story forward, in my opinion. And right when it starts getting to like the meat of it, like, oh, cool, I can see what Mephisto's plan is, how it's going to play out, this and that, it just ends. And it's like, oh, this is a middle chapter in a 3-part story. The big conclusions yet to come. Who knows? Maybe another expand. I really hope it's not till Diablo 5 because that would be ridiculous. Like, they definitely have teed it up for like a finale, but a finale that isn't here just yet.
Do you think they would do a second expansion? Because typically Diablo's only
It's only
get
been
one
one.
big expansion. Yeah,
I know. I that's what I was a bit confused by when I got to the end, and it felt like it wasn't done. I was like, they usually only do the one. There was Reaper of Souls. There was Lords of Destruction for Diablo 2. I don't know. Maybe they see Diablo 4 as such a good base that they could continue building on it.
they could. I'm not against it, to be clear.
Yeah.
It's just it's unusual.
I know
for this
it
kind
would.
of game, yeah.
To me, it feels like they have to. They've kind of
Yeah.
like set it up as there will be another expansion. I highly doubt they're going to finish that story off in like seasonal content or stuff like that. So yeah, I'm not sure. But from a story perspective, I thought it was a big step backwards from the main game, and that was kind of disappointing. The thing that was not disappointing at all was just the new class.
I'm watching the footage. Looks like a lot of fun.
It's so good. It's like, so it's the Spiritborn's kind of like the monk in Diablo 3, very, very fast melee action, but extremely versatile in the types of damage that you deal out. So you have access to like 4 different trees or attributes. You've got gorilla, jaguar, centipede, and eagle. And each of them kind of has their own focus. So like the centipede focuses on poison damage, the eagle's lightning damage and taking advantage of vulnerable status effects. The gorilla is more based around defense, and the jaguar is like predominantly about physical attack and attack speed. And initially it's like, cool, I'm going to do a pure gorilla build or pure eagle build. And at this, the first couple of levels, that's kind of how you have to do it, because there's just not enough points to really start getting creative with the ways that you combine every single aspect of these trees. But once you start getting to like level 40, level 50, because I started from 0 here, like you can do that as well. You can just jump straight into the campaign and go from 0, and you kind of level up to 60 by the end of the campaign. It feels really good. Once you start combining all 3, you start unlocking these ridiculous feeling builds. So the build I settled on was one where I was using a lot of eagle attacks. So there's this damage attack where you throw out like quills from feathers, and they kind of fan out and they come back to you, and they do like damage in both ways. And I paired that with like a dodge that if I dodged, like I had like a cooldown on it, but when I dodged, I'd throw out more of those quills. So essentially like getting away from damage while doing damage, which felt really good. But then paired with like a jaguar attack that increased my attack speed as long as I continually killed enemies, meant I could keep that going almost indefinitely. And that attack speed boost was like monumental. So it would just like melt through enemies using this damage attack, especially when I'm stacking vulnerable status effects on them, and killing them spreads that vulnerability to enemies nearby. It's like a snowball effect that feels really, really good, like a Diablo does. You feel good playing Diablo when you feel overpowered enough but still challenged by the enemies, so that you're not just like cakewalking them. And I think there's so much depth to this class where I'm pretty sure there's going to be like way more complex builds and way more interesting builds. I'm curious to see how like the centipede works out, because there's an ability there where like if you kill an enemy that's poisoned, he kind of like bursts and other enemies around him then become poisoned. And then you can buff that with like damage to poisoned enemies. So you can really get hectic with that as well. It's just really cool. I think the Spiritborn feels like multiple classes in one. And so I think especially if you're playing alone, it is the class to pick currently, because you can just be so versatile. And the class has got enough survivability to be viable alone and enough damage output to be viable alone. Whereas if you played as like a mage or a barbarian, you might struggle with one or the other in that respect if you were playing alone. It's just a really, really fun class to play. And, I think feels a bit overpowered now to kind of also sell the expansion. Of course,
100%.
The big marquee class needs to feel super, super special. And I definitely think it's going to be balanced quite a bit. But yeah, so far, if you like buying the expansion for I want the new class and I want more campaign content, I think you'll be pretty happy with that alone.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of additional content as well that I think plays more into the end game. You remember the Nephilim rifts from Reaper of Souls. So there's a sort of thing that's similar to that. I mean, the pit in the existing game was kind of like that, but there's a thing now called the Kurast Undercity, where once you unlock it in the game's main like hub, it's sort of like it's a timed dungeon. So you have to get through 3 floors and work your way towards a boss.
Yeah.
And you start the dungeon run with just 100 seconds on the clock.
Okay.
And certain enemies add time to that clock. And there's also certain like little side objectives that you can complete to increase the level of rewards that you get
nice.
at the end. So it's like this balance of I need to seek out these enemies to gain more time, but also like try and buff this meter as much as I can to actually get, good loot by the end of this.
Yeah.
And it's really, really addictive. I find it really fun because you have to be really good at dealing damage because you need to be very fast getting through this dungeon. You can't even spend time taking on enemies that won't give you a reward at all. So you end up running away from a lot of enemies, picking some fights, and then having all those enemies that are like chasing you join that fight at the same time.
Nice.
And it just feels great. It's a really, really cool mode that you can kind of tinker with it to give you specific rewards. Like you can add modifiers that make it harder or give you less time, and in turn that will give you like a higher rarity of reward or a certain type of reward. So I think you can, going into the end game, you can really hone it to deliver the sort of stuff you need for your build. In addition to that, there is I can't remember, I think it's called Dark Citadel. Dark Citadel is like a very, very late game activity now, where it only unlocks in Torment level 1. I'm sure you've seen this now, like with the update, the levels have changed. Yes, there's no more world tiers. There's no more like regions that have specific levels. Now everything is flattened. Everything scales to your level and scales accordingly to the level you've selected. So Torment level 1 is only unlocked when you've defeated the pit at a certain level.
Okay.
And once you go into that, the Dark Citadel is unlocked. And this is more of a team-based PvE sort of dungeon where you can pair up with 2 to 4 players. There's matchmaking, but I think you need to be on like comms with people because there are these like light raid puzzles in the dungeon that remind me a lot of Destiny, where like sometimes it'll divide all the players into like very separate rooms, and you'll have to figure out firstly the puzzle in that room and be able to deal enough damage to deal with any enemies there, because you won't have anyone else there to revive you. And if you die, you basically wipe. You have to start that sector again.
Shit. Okay.
The same goes for the boss battles. The boss battles have some very intricate mechanics to them, and they're also timed. So you can't just sit there for 30 minutes like grinding it out. You have to be a certain level, and your build has to be of a certain proficiency to kind of get through these dungeons. And they're really cool. I think if you're playing with the right people and you are very invested in building very smartly, I think it's a really cool way to extend the life of the game beyond just grinding. I do find though that it takes a lot of time to get ready for that sort of thing. Like you need to get to Torment level 1 and you need to have a really good build. So I think it's a very big component of the expansion that not everyone's going to see, because not everyone plays Diablo in that way. They come in for the campaign, they fuck around a bit, and then they leave.
Yeah.
Which I don't think is a bad thing for the game. It's just something to keep in mind when you see the like checklist of all the things that are coming in the expansion. The Dark Citadel is one that I think the fewest people will actually get to, even though it's probably one of the most interesting aspects. So
yeah,
it's a good expansion. I think it's solid. It's Reaper of Souls had so much going for it because like Diablo 3 was not in a good space then. And it, along with the patch that arrived with it, like did a lot to lay the foundation for how Diablo 3 survived for the years after that. It was like a big reset in my mind. Yeah. Diablo 4 doesn't need that, in my opinion. Like you just played it for the first time now and it's good. Like it's not in a bad space. So for the expansion to still come out and still feel worthwhile and meaningful is, I think, testament to how good of a job Blizzard is doing with Diablo currently. And I think that only bodes well for the game, going forward in the next 12, 24 months as they maybe build out a new expansion.
Yeah.
Who knows?
I mean, in Diablo 4, if Diablo 2 and Diablo 3 are anything to go by, though it's going to be around for many, many years. I mean, what is the gap between Diablo 2 and Diablo 3 was something stupid like 10 years. And then I think when
3 and 4 was 10 years as well.
Well, it is wild because when 3 came out, I was like, damn, Diablo 2 came out 10 years ago. And then when 4 was announced, I was like, wow, but Diablo 3 was, oh, damn, it was like 10 years ago. Where did the time go?
It was a very long time.
So
very, very long time.
I think they're probably, if based on what you said, they probably will consider or are likely to do a second expansion. But Diablo 4 it's going to be around for so long with seasonal content, just in the base game alone. It's good fun. Like I've really enjoyed it, and I'm now grappling with, well, do I keep playing Diablo 4 because I really want to, or shall I move on to something else? And I can tell you now, it's difficult to stop playing Diablo 4. I do just want to keep going, getting better loot, getting better, start doing some Paragon levels. Maybe try another
have you
class.
opened up that Paragon board? It is immense.
It's immense.
There's so much happening there.
No, go for it.
Go for it.
There's
so much happening with that board. Because like it really is the thing that keeps you going for like months on end. You know what I mean? I don't know if you've looked at build guides, but the way that people like, you can spend 200, 300, 400 points on the Paragon board in this way and get this build, or spend it this way and get this completely separate build. It's crazy how much depth there is to the game already, and they're just like expanding on it. Yeah.
No, I wanted to say I'm in this weird middle spot now where I think, so I wasn't done with the Diablo 4 campaign, and I think my rogue was I hit level 50, and then I hit level 51, which gave me 1 Paragon point, because 50 was sort of not level cap, but like or was it the level cap?
It went further up. Because so they squashed it down to 60 now. 60 is now the level cap.
It did go higher than that, but it was 100, I think, maybe. But you couldn't get 100 points to put in your skill tree. It was like
no. You started getting Paragon points at that point.
Yeah. Okay. So I hit level 51. So I hit level 50, the quote-unquote soft cap on the skill tree, and I got 1 Paragon point. Then the expansion dropped. That cap is now 60. So now it's like I'm level 51, but I'm level 50 plus 1 Paragon point. But now every level I get lets me put points into my main skill tree.
Yes, yeah.
Which I was very confused because I also had done some rebalancing and moved some things around. It's like, what the hell happened?
Yeah, that's a good point. A lot of the big changes that feel tied to this expansion are actually part of the game's like free update. Yeah. Like the difficulty tiers, the squashing of numbers. I'm sure you've noticed that there's not like extreme exponential numbers blowing up on the screen now. They've kind of like reined it all in so that they are manageable numbers. Like for the first couple of 20, 30 levels, the amount of damage I was doing was in the hundreds, and the amount of life I had was in the hundreds, which is far more manageable from a like calculations perspective when you're trying to figure out the effectiveness of a build. But it is cool that you now have 10 more points to put into your skill tree, and that they've balanced it a bit more. And having a soft cap of 60 now, and then Paragon kicks in again is, I think, a good change. There was an item during the review period because we played in a completely different server prior to launch, and I didn't get to keep any of my progress. But a colleague of mine at GameSpot found, I don't know how, but found an item. It was like a 30-minute buff that would buff, I think, experience earned or something that was like completely broken. So much so that he ran me through one run of the pit, and in those 10 minutes where he was basically just, shepherding me through, I wasn't really doing much. I got 250 Paragon levels.
What?
It was like monumentally broken. Something was very wrong with
That
that
is,
item,
yeah.
and I'm pretty sure it's not there anymore. But that was part of the reason why I could play Dark Citadel, because there's no way I would have had the time to like
To
get
sit and
to that
grind it
level.
out, yeah.
But
That's crazy.
it's insane. Yeah. But again, that's the sort of time investment you're going to need to get to that sort of content. So it's just something to keep in mind.
Hilarious.
Game's great. Expansion's not on Game Pass, so it's the first time. I know you were playing it via Games Pass, so now it's like, ooh, do I drop money to continue playing the expansion?
Even Diablo 4 itself is such an interesting thing because it's Blizzard doing that thing. I mean, a lot of game developers do now, where you've got the base game, but you can just spend so much more money in game if you want it on skins and other stuff. But I think this is where Game Pass is going to get people as well, where it's like, cool, I can play Diablo 4, but now I want to play the expansion. Like, let me cough up more money to just outright buy it. I do wonder, like, in a year or two, will they just add it to Game Pass? Maybe. I don't know.
I don't know. They've been a bit inconsistent when it comes to that, with first-party games. It always has seemed like the base game is the upsell to the expansion.
The rest of the content.
Yeah, and like a lot of expansion content doesn't usually come to Game Pass. But I also find it a bit of an odd selling point for people, because like, do you want to purchase an expansion to a game you don't technically own?
Yeah.
And like, I know Game Pass will always have it will have Diablo there all the time. It will have Call of Duty there all the time. But at the same time, you just let your subscription lapse and suddenly you lose access to expansion content that you've actually paid for.
Yeah.
It's an odd... I don't feel comfortable doing that. Like, I would outright probably own both of them. I wouldn't want to own expansion content to a base game I don't technically own, but maybe this is how they are seeing people engage with games now. I'm not sure. But
I don't know.
That's the strategy they're sticking with. So, yeah. Just something to keep in mind.
Wild. Cool.
Yeah. It's Diablo 4, Vessel of Hatred. I'm looking forward to playing more, but it's a bit of a tough prospect to now like start from zero
from scratch again
with the Spiritborn, which,
oh gosh,
after like 30 plus hours, I'm like, I've got other stuff to play right now, but I'll probably return to it eventually.
It is a game you can pick up in a few months, in a year or two, and it'll always be the game that gives you some legendary loot. It feels good.
It's true. It's true.
The moment that swing appears, it's like, yes.
I love it. I love it.
Beat
and
the
then
boss,
you get to like,
and it just explodes with like 3 legendaries. Like, yes.
It's so good.
This is
and
what
then
I
you get
played
to
for.
stuff above legendary as well, and it's just like, yes, give me more.
Need more of that stuff. Cool.
I forgot what the last game was.
It is.
Oh, right. It is a good old anime fighter. I couldn't think of a great transition between Diablo and Dragon Ball Z Sparkling Zero, or as Matthew affectionately calls it, Sparkling Water.
Sparkling water, man. I mean,
you know what? They both taste just as good. So
really,
I'm in for this. I love sparkling water.
The one tastes like TV static, and the other one tastes like.
Do you not like TV static? Do you not like drinking TV static?
I can't tell you. It's my favorite thing.
It's delicious, delicious, really
absolutely delicious. But
put a bit of lemon in there, even more delicious.
Absolutely
top
tasty.
Tier.
So Dragon Ball Z Sparkling Water. You playing this game? I am not. You tell me about what is going on.
I've only briefly played it. We only got code earlier this week, and between balancing that and Zelda and Diablo and everything else, like I've put in a handful of hours, and so far it's cool. It reminds me a lot of the Dragon Ball Z Budokai games from PlayStation 2, which I think is exactly what the developers are going for, to try and bring that era of fighting games back, which kind of means it's like a bit more loose in terms of fighting game mechanics, a bit more unbalanced, but it is all about the presentation and about making you feel like you are these over-the-top characters while, Dragon Ball Z Fighters, the 2D game, looks the part, but it is definitely a Arc System Works very complex fighting game.
Yeah.
Whereas this is something I can get more behind, because it is like, I just want to fuck around as Goku, or like mash some buttons and do, 2D stuff. And then you get to like, these crazy combos and a kamehameha like every now and then, and just relive the best moments from the series. And on that aspect, it's like hitting all the right notes for me. You get to play through the events of the now very, very large anime. It's like got Dragon Ball Z stuff. It's got Dragon Ball Z Super stuff. So there's a lot of content.
Yeah.
It's odd. You get these moments where you can kind of like diverge from the story. So a very early example is you are fighting Raditz and he runs away with Gohan, just like in the first 2 episodes of the show. And Piccolo suddenly comes out of nowhere and is like, I want to help you rid the planet of this alien. And, you know, Goku and Piccolo at this point are not friends. They're actually like enemies. So you actually get the choice to accept his help or not, where, you know, in the show, he definitely accepts his help. Like Piccolo and Goku go and fight Raditz. So I chose not to because I wanted to see what happened. And I think the only thing that changed was in the actual fight that I play in, Piccolo's not there to help me. Because as soon as the fight ended, it reverted back to the canon of the story where Piccolo kills Raditz and Goku. Yeah. So interesting. Not a sort of like divergent story from the show. I think that like takes all your decisions into account, but an interesting way to change up some of the moments, I guess.
Yeah.
There's also some oddities where I'm sure you saw in the footage now, like Goku was fighting Raditz and he basically like exhausted his life bar, got to 0, and the game just kind of stops.
Yeah.
Like both of the characters just stop midair, stare at each other, nothing happens, you get experience points, whatever, and then it cuts to a cutscene, and the cutscene is like Raditz on the verge of killing Goku, and it's like, well, that's not how that fight played out, but sure. So yeah, there's a bit of a disconnect between the actual gameplay and the story that it's trying to tell. But other than that, the fighting is really cool. You can get close and far from enemies very, very quickly. You can pull off abilities with just a few button presses, which I appreciate. And it's all about like balancing your meters, like balancing how much energy you have, balancing your distance between enemies and how much power they have, because all of that ties into like what counters you can do, when you can do counters, what abilities you can pop off. And that becomes really important when enemies are kind of like countering you left, right, and center. Like if you have not kept up your like charge meter, you won't be able to pull off the same counters and they'll very quickly take you out.
Yeah.
So I'm still figuring out the nuances between all of those, you know, that sort of balancing act and all the moves that you have access to, because the game doesn't really do a good job of tutorializing that at the beginning. You kind of have to hop into the training mode and see what's there. But once you start messing around, even with just the basic moves, you can do all sorts of cool stuff. Like you can do instant transmission to get behind enemies and chain that with some like really big attacks. You can hold down some buttons for more charged attacks, but if you let go at certain times, they do different things. Like one of the coolest interactions I've had is if you hold down the attack button, you'll do like a move where, you know, like you really knock someone hard and they fly through a mountain or something and the mountain gets decimated. But if you let go of that button at the right time in the middle of that like charging up, you will do the exact same move, but you will teleport behind them before you do it. So it will subvert any sort of block they have going, you know, anticipating that. And that just feels good because it's rewarding like a timing-based thing in a very frantic fight.
Yeah.
And there's lots of little flourishes like that, which I think are just really fun. And it doesn't require, I think, super in-depth fighting game knowledge. Like I'm not that sort of player. I had to spend some time in the training mode just to kind of get to grips with what options I had while fighting. But after that, I was kind of just like enjoying my time, just button mashing a bit, kind of thinking a little bit, and re-enjoying a story that I've rewatched multiple times in my life. So from that aspect, it's really good. It also looks phenomenal. I think it looks the part.
Yeah,
you know?
Visually, it's so interesting because it's got the exact look of the show, right? But it still looks modern. Like the arena looks like, you know, just any 3D modern fighting game arena, but still with the style of Dragon Ball. but then the characters
Yes.
themselves look just like they've ripped from the cartoon, but like very vibrant cutouts, contrasted so strong against that background. It just looks good. It's basically what I'm getting at.
It really captures Akira Toriyama's style, but yeah, obviously it has to be 3D, which gives it a bit more depth. But the color palette, the shading, the cell shading, it just looks really, really good. And I appreciate that a lot. It's also got in a year where menus are such a big thing, especially in the context of Metaphor Fantasia, I think it's got such a cool main menu, because every tab you go between, it's Goku hopping between like different scenes and parties of characters. So like at the beginning, he's just chilling in the city with like his family and Bulma and Vegeta, and then you toggle over to the settings menu or like I can't remember. There's so many different like menu transitions. One of them, you're in like King Kai's palace and Shenron is there, and then the other you're in this like room with this character. I can't remember his name, but he's from Super. He looks like this little blue alien. It's just cool. Like, it's a very dynamic way to present a main menu, which seems like a very small thing, but I appreciate the sort of care to that, because again, if you're a fan of this property, it's the sort of things that you'd appreciate.
Yeah.
It's cool. I'm keen to play more. I already got my ass handed to me by Gorilla Vegeta, which seems to be a very big problem on the internet. Like, even the developers are like, you can put down the difficulty, it's fine. It goes to show that not everything is balanced, but that often works more in your favor than not. So in the instances where it doesn't, just it's fine. Lower the difficulty, get past that, go back. There's a lot of content here. I mean, if you're just playing through Goku's story alone, there's shit tons, but there's also, you can play through a Vegeta story, a Goku Black story, a Frieza story. There's a lot going on here. So I think if you just really need a fix of Dragon Ball Z, this will keep you going for quite a while, I think.
Sorry if this is a dumb question, but there is online multiplayer, I presume, like fighting each other.
Yes,
okay.
There is. Yeah, I've seen some videos of I know Blessing from Kind of Funny is having a great time online with this, and
it's game of the year.
Yeah, it's nuts. He's a fighting game freak. So the fact that he's finding tons of depths in these mechanics shows that it does exist there.
Yeah.
And I like that I don't have to engage with that to enjoy myself here, but I'm glad that the people who do want to get really nitty gritty and deep with the stuff are finding it. That's a really good balance to strike.
Nice. Looks cool.
Dragon Ball Z. Yeah, it's good. You should watch Dragon Ball Super. It's very, very good. There's a Egyptian cat guard who is like the best fighter in the universe. His name is Beerus. He's very cool.
Love to see
the only reason he spares Earth is because he likes instant ramen. No jokes.
Of course. Well, what a time to be alive.
Bulma cooks him instant ramen. He's like, well, I can't destroy this place now. Too good.
Amazing. I should.
Ramen solves all woes. Like,
I feel Dragon Ball's like one of those mainstream animes that I've just like, it's just blown past me. Like, I watched a little bit as a kid, but I've never committed to.
I was going to ask. I'm like, there's no way you've watched nothing.
I don't know. I've seen, but I can't tell you. I don't know what the main story beats are. I don't know who all the big villains are, and like bits and pieces.
Wait, let's do a quiz. What are the big main villains you do know?
I know there's Boo and Majin Buu.
Okay, nice. Like that. That's good. That's the last one in Dragon Ball Z. Sure.
Yeah, that's probably the only bit I watched.
No ways. Frieza?
Okay, no, I know some of those. Yeah, but I, if you say them, I go, yeah, I recognize the name, but I can't outright list them.
Cell?
Cell? Mm-hmm.
Android 18, Android 17.
I've heard of Android 18. Mm-hmm. So I've heard of them, but I haven't watched like all these arcs or anything.
Okay.
No.
There is a somewhat abridged version because anime has tons and tons of filler.
Of course.
But they released a very streamlined version of Dragon Ball Z called Dragon Ball Z Kai. Highly recommend.
Nice.
I rewatched that a couple of years ago. It is just the main beats. They leave out whole arcs that were like filler arcs between the bigger villain ones. They just do not give a shit about that. They throw it out like 20, 30 episodes. They don't care.
Speaking my language here, perfect.
And it is I mean, it still feels, it's a lot of episodes still. Like, I think it's over 100, but it is not the 300-400 that you would otherwise have to get through. And
that is a lot.
It feels like every episode is moving the story forward. There's no bullshit.
Okay.
So it is a very good way to watch Dragon Ball Z, I think, in the modern age, and I highly recommend that. And then Super, I think, does away with a lot of the filler stuff. I really enjoyed watching Super, so would recommend that too.
Nice. I should just play the game. Just play some sparkling water.
You should.
Get all
sparkling
the main
water.
beats.
Drink some sparkling water. And drink sparkling water while playing Sparkling Zero.
Nice.
That's how you power up very, very quickly in that game.
Love to see it.
Do you want to just wrap up some small games that I know we've both finished here and there? Give some.
Yeah, we can touch
I know
on
you
them
finished Dead Rising.
I did finish Dead Rising. Let me just make a timestamp here. Dead Rising. Good God. So
Dead Rising Deluxe Remastered?
That's it. It's Doctor. That's how I've been remembering it.
DDR.
No, DRDR.
Oh, damn it. Capcom,
Dead
you
Rising,
had one job.
Deluxe Remaster. So I think if you want to hear, the bulk of my thoughts in the game, definitely check out our last discussion on it. Because nothing else has really changed other than I've rolled credits in the game. I enjoyed it. I can see why it is such a beloved franchise, and I think that the game does have some really, really interesting ideas which were pretty novel for the time. The fact that you're in a shopping mall with a persistent time limit, and there are a whole lot of different survivors, and you can ignore them or you can go save them, and there are multiple endings, which I read up on after. So I can only imagine living in the 360 era when this game came out, and the enjoyment and excitement of trying to figure out, how do I unlock all these endings? How do I save everyone? Because there are certain main characters which, if you just follow the main story to the T, like you tick off all the main objectives, 2 of the main characters die. And I was like, but there's an achievement for, saving everyone. So I'm like, how the hell do you do that? And it's funny because ultimately it means just the basic solution is just don't do all the main objectives, because then they don't end up going to that location to meet that person. And it's just fascinating that what seems like it is like I don't mean this in an insulting way at all. It is like a simplistic zombie survival game. But there is all this depth to thinking out, well, how do I do this? How do I unlock that ending? What is the optimal way to get to that side of the mall, for example? What are the best weapons? What are the best combinations? And I just had a generally good time with it. Although I will say there are some dated things, like boss fights to me weren't great. There were these like unreasonably large health bars, and whittling them down just didn't feel good to me. I think that's just a product of the time. But other than that, like, I really enjoyed it, and I'm glad I finally played, like, I finally ticked off Dead Rising, because it is one of those games in the 360 era that I would have loved to have played, but I didn't own the console, so I just had no means to play it. And it did come to PC years later, if I'm not mistaken, but I just never got around to it. So yeah, it's a good time.
No, it seems cool. I want to go back to it, because like I said last time, I played Dead Rising 2, really enjoyed that. Played Dead Rising 3, didn't enjoy that nearly as much. And I've just never played the first one, so I kind of want to like see how this whole thing started. And by all accounts, this remaster is really good. It's like fundamentally a remake of that game. So I just want to get stuck into that. Yeah, like you said, that 360 era nonsense.
Yeah.
It's a good time for that. I mean, Dragon Ball Z Sparkling Zero is a modern game that is harkening back to that time of video games. Got Dead Rising doing that, so good time to be reminded of a different period of video games. So
yeah, neat. I mean, I do wonder if people see if this game sells stupidly well. Let's I don't know how well it would sell, but let's say they go, oh, there's actually a hunger for more Dead Rising. Do they remaster the other games, or do they go, let's release a Dead Rising? What's the next one? 4, 5, I think.
I think it would be 5, yeah, because they did a 4 with Frank West, and that like kind of got a rise out of people, but not like a huge one. So
Yeah.
I assume 5. Yeah, I wonder. I mean, Capcom is on such a roll.
Yeah.
I could see them attempting that for sure.
I saw, just last thing I'll say, that I saw a rumor. I don't know if I saw it on Reddit or somewhere on social media, people saying that, the rumor is Capcom will revisit it and it'll be set on a cruise ship. And I thought, damn, that is
that's a cool
really,
idea.
really cool idea. Yeah.
That's a damn cool idea. Yeah. Because I mean, cruise ships are basically moving malls right now.
Exactly. A lot bigger.
Yeah, I actually want that now.
Yeah, I think that'd be a great idea for a sequel. So we'll see.
Nice.
Cool.
On my end, I finally finished Star Wars Outlaws.
Nice.
Hit credits on that. Was super surprised at how much of the game's story just exists in that game's last like third or quarter.
100%.
I actually forgot so many of the story beats that were kind of introduced in the first few hours of that game because they just don't manifest at all throughout the rest of the game
100%.
until you hit that point. Very odd way to tell a story, in my opinion, but I still had a fantastic time with that game. I think it's really good. It's really sad that it is kind of not hit commercially and critically to the point where I think a sequel is a very slim possibility at this point, because I'd like to see a second attempt at this, to kind of, buff out some of the rough edges. Yeah, just see new ideas, see how they can improve on this base. I think Darren put it in a good way. He's like, I want to see the Assassin's Creed 2 of this game. Like, we've got this template. How can we improve upon it? And I think that could have been really cool. And I won't count it out just yet, but I'm not too optimistic about that future. But either way, I think the game is really fun, and I think if you give it the time to enjoy, you'll have a good time. I think it doesn't benefit from rushing through it. And I think one of the things that made it work for me was just how much care and attention went into making it feel like a part of that period of Star Wars.
Yeah.
It really does recreate a lot of those locations and planets and the vibe, the very like dirty, gritty vibe of that era of Star Wars, as opposed to the very pristineness of a lot of other Star Wars media. So it's cool. It's just really fun to be on a speeder in Tatooine, roaming around a pretty empty space, which is quite novel that they actually allowed it to be that empty, and then happening upon like an Imperial base and suddenly being in these very reflective, very white, very sterile hallways that are synonymous with the Empire. There's just such attention to detail and the look and feel of that game, and I loved being in that world mostly, except for that jungle planet. It can go get fucked.
Yeah, jungle planet is actual garbage. Not actual garbage, but it's terrible.
Akiva is the worst.
But I think you're right. It's aesthetically, like they hit the nail on the head. It feels like a Star Wars that we remember from the 80s, the original trilogy. It feels like you are living in that world where things are. It's this weird vintage vibe to it. You walk into a cantina and it looks like it's just come out of the original trilogy, and it's really cool.
Yep. You see people drinking that blue milk. You see that weird blue elephant dude playing his fucking piano. It's great. Jabba's palace, fantastic. I know that that vibe so much from Return of the Jedi, and like they nailed it from the scale of it in the side of the mountain to the sort of like entrance with the little eye thing that pops out of the wall, to just his room where he is. It's good. It's really, really good. And I think if you've just been yearning for that sort of like nostalgic Star Wars hit, this really does deliver that in spades. Even if you find the stealth a bit rudimentary or the action a bit rudimentary, I think it's serviceable enough. I found it at least not off-putting. I didn't find it revolutionary, but I didn't have a bad time with it. But also, Sabak rules. Sabak is like top 3 minigame of 2024. It is so good. I can't stop playing it. I want to play more of it. It's loved it.
It's a good time.
Outlaws is good. Outlaws is. It sounds like I'm being negative on it, but it is the perfect like 7 out of 10 game.
Yeah.
It is not perfect, not phenomenal by any means, but God, I'm so happy I played it.
Same.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. I think there's nothing else you want to touch on that you've been chomping at the bit on.
No. That's pretty much all I've been playing.
Yeah, same. I'm hoping to play more of Zelda and Dragon Ball Z in the coming days. I'd like to look at Silent Hill if we get the opportunity, as well as Metaphor ReFantasia, because obviously I just have 100 hours to burn and I kind of need to spend it on something.
Good luck.
So, yeah. But yeah, the end of the year is coming and it is busy. November is still busy, but then it obviously slows down for December. But what's happening?
At least 2 of the Silent Hill 2 and what's the Atlas game called? It's gone now.
Metaphor.
But you can get them both on PC. Play them on Steam Deck.
It's true.
Which is a big help.
Although Metaphor is very expensive on Steam currently.
Add it to your wish list. Pick it up on sale.
Silent Hill though, if you're in South Africa, very cheap on Steam.
Weird. I wonder why.
Yeah, weird. Take advantage. It is like 500 Rand on Steam. Crazy.
Nice.
Cannot believe it. If your PC is up to snuff, because it is quite an intense game.
Oh, really?
Apparently. So
I know.
Yeah.
Nice.
But yeah, that's been episode 258 of Checkpoint Chat. I'm sure we'll be popping in a bit more frequently leading up to the end of the year, just because there's so much going on.
Happening.
But as always, we'll keep you updated on social media, and we will keep playing and sampling as much as we can between now and then. There's a whole goddamn console launch in the next couple of weeks as well, so lots of things happening, lots of moving parts.
Nice.
But until then, we hope you stay safe. We hope you stay well. Thank you so much for listening as always, and we will see you next time. Goodbye.
Goodbye.